Hello my dear students, welcome to English literature class. Hope you all are fine. Students, we have started reading the chapter number 11, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, written by Arthur Conan Doyle of class 7. Okay, so we have already read the page number 81 and page number 82. Today reading from the page number 83. Students, what we started reading in this chapter? We started reading about Sherlock Holmes, who is the most well-known and loved fictional detective in literature. Fine. So, reading from the page number 83, the first paragraph. I am afraid, my dear Watson, that most of your conclusions were incorrect. Not that you are entirely wrong in this instance. The man is certainly a country practitioner, and he walks a good deal. Then I was right to that extent, but that was all. No, my dear Watson, not all. By no means all. I would suggest for example that a presentation to a doctor is more likely to come from a hospital than from a hunt, and then that when the initial CC are placed before that hospital, the word Charing Cross very naturally suggests themselves. You may be right, I said. In that case, supposing that CCH does stand for Charing Cross Hospital, what further inferences may we draw? Do none suggest themselves? You know my methods, apply them. I can only think of the obvious conclusion that the man has practiced in town before going to the country. I think that we might deduce a little more than this. Look at it in this light. On what occasion would it be most probable that such a presentation would be made? Obviously, at the moment when Dr. Mortimer withdrew from the service of the hospital in order to start a practice for himself. We believe there has been a change from a town hospital to a country practice. It certainly seems probable. So, students, what happened then? See, however, Holmes quickly contradicts almost all of Watson's conclusions. Holmes suggests that while the owner is clearly a country practitioner, CCH actually means Charing Cross Hospital. The cane was probably presented on the occasion of the man's retirement from the hospital, and only a young man would have retired from a successful city practice to move to a rural one. So when Mr. Sherlock Holmes told that Dr. Watson was wrong in his deductions, but he said that he was not entirely wrong, as he clearly said that obviously the owner of the cane was the country practitioner, but he was not an old person, because only the young persons, as he mentioned that only a young man would have retired from a successful city practice. And then Mr. Sherlock Holmes said that what will be our next inferences? So he said that you know my methods, apply them. Okay, so they started applying the methods of Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Now you will observe that he could not have been on the staff of the hospital, since only a man well established in a London practice could hold such a position, and such a one would not drift into the country. If he was in the hospital and yet not on the staff, he could only have been a house surgeon or a house physician, little more than a senior student, and he left 5 years ago. 5 years ago, the date is on the stake. So the middle-aged family practitioner vanishes into thin air my dear Watson, and there emerged a young fellow under 30, and ambitious, absent minded, and the possessor of a favorite dog, which I should describe roughly as being larger than a terrier and smaller than a mastiff. I laughed incredulously as Sherlock Holmes leaned back in his settee. As to the latter part, I have no means of checking you, said I, but at least it is not difficult to find out a few particulars about the man's age and professional career. From my small medical shelf, I took down the medical directory and turned up the name. There were several Mortimers, but only one who could be our visitor. I read his record aloud. So, students, Holmes goes on to suggest that the man must possess a spaniel dog and give a spaniel dog give the bite marks on the cane, and he playfully announces given the appearance of the master of the dog and their front door. So, students, what we read till this paragraph, that Holmes examines the stick himself and concludes that Mortimer received the stick as a gift from a hospital rather than from a hunting club. He deduced, he deduced that Mortimer has withdrawn from a town hospital to begin his own practice in the country. He adds that Mortimer must be absent-minded, amiable, unambitious, and a dog owner. So, Watson points out how impossible it is to confirm most of Holmes' suspicions without meeting Mortimer. The professional aspects, though, he can easily check using his medical directory. Mortimer James, MRCS, 1882, house surgeon from 1882 to 1884 at Charing Cross Hospital, medical officer for the parishes of Grimpen, Thorsley and High Barrow. So, students, sure enough, Watson consults the book. He finds that the Mortimer was indeed a house surgeon at Charing Cross Hospital some years before. A country doctor, as you very astutely observed. As to the adjectives, I said, if I remember right, amiable, unambitious, and absent-minded. It is my experience that it is only an amiable man in this world who receives testimonials, only an unambitious one who abandons a London career for the country, and only an absent-minded one who leaves his stick and not his visiting card after waiting an hour in your room. And the dog has been the habit of carrying this stick behind his master. Being a heavy stick, the dog has held it tightly by the middle, and the marks of his teeth are very plainly visible. The dog's jaw, as shown in the space between these marks, is too broad, in my opinion, for a terrier and not broad enough for a mastiff. It may have been, yes, it is a curly-haired spaniel. So, students, here Holmes comes to the correct conclusions. Holmes goes on to explain in greater depth how he arrived to easily at them, as he is discussing how he deduces that the dog must be between a terrier and a mastiff. Holmes explains decidedly that the dog is a curly-haired spaniel. Watson wanted to know how Holmes could possibly know the exact breed of dog. He had risen and paced the room as he spoke. Now he halted in the recess of the window. There was such a ring of conviction in his voice that I glanced up in surprise. "My dear fellow, how can you possibly be sure of that?" for the very simple reason that I see the dog himself on our very doorstep and there is a ring of its honor. The appearance of our visitor was surprise to me since I had expected a typical country practitioner.